It's very painful for an hour, or a dental procedure that's very painful for an hour, sorry about the S there, and then some additional mild pain. Who votes for A? You got to choose one. Who votes for A? Okay. Who votes for B? Okay. Here's the big finding. The big finding is, yes, B involves more pain. It's true. A is an hour of pain, B is an hour of pain, plus a few minutes of more pain. Seems like a no-brainer. But when you have A or B, and you have to remember it later on, you'll have a much nicer memory of B than A. Kahneman's insight is, when you think back on events, you don't just add up the amount of pleasure or pain you experience. Rather, your memory is highly skewed to peaks and then to endings. And you could imagine this. In the first case, A, you leave and say, oh God, that was terrible. Oh, B, you leave and say, oh, that was mildly painful. There was nothing terrible in the middle there, but it ended okay, mild pain. It turns out, in general, endings matter a lot. Kahneman did his research with both in a laboratory where you could give people mild pain by getting them to stick their hand in freezing cold water, and with people undergoing extremely painful colonoscopy procedures. And it turns out that if you want to give people a good memory or a less bad memory of a horrible event, topping them off with some mild pain will do the trick. In the end, well, endings matter. Both of these examples, a party that's hugely fun for 90%, then the last 10%, somebody slaps you in the face and pours dip on you or something. So 90% of good stuff, 10% bad stuff, versus 90% people are slapping you and pouring dip on you. But then 10%, whoa, that was a really good. When you think back on it, if you just added it up, A would be much better. But B has this huge pull because of the power of how things end. So endings matter. So I'm going to end things now. I'm first going to do a few things. Before saying anything more, I want to thank the teaching fellows that are Sunny Bang, Eric Cherise, Jane Erickson, Isaac Giroudi, Greg Lown, and Colleen McCring. I think they did a superb job. We've basically reviewed all the psychology. Here was a promissory note we started with at the beginning of this semester. I think you're now in a position to answer, or at least consider answers, about these topics. About topics such as dreams, testimony, disgust, memory, depression, language, humor, and even a little bit about good and evil. This is a broad intro survey class. And the field of psychology is broad, and we've just gotten started. If you're interested, this is a great department. There's some amazing scholars here and some amazing teachers. And there are courses that go into detail about just about every topic I talked about. If you're interested in memory or social interaction or mental illness, I could point you to some great courses. I'm not taking any sophomore advisees next year because I'm on leave in the fall, but you should feel free to come talk to me if you want any specific advice or suggestions. Now, I know not all of you are going to end up majoring in psychology. Some of you will choose cognitive science instead. But on a more serious note, I know for some of you this is the last, maybe the first, but the last psychology class you'll ever take. And so I want to close this course by emphasizing two themes. The first one is a bit of humility. There are some very basic questions about the mind, and I've tried to be honest about this throughout the course. There are some very basic questions about the mind that nobody knows the answer to yet. We know the brain is the source of mental life, but we don't have any understanding at all about exactly how this happens, about how a physical object, a lump of meat, can give rise to conscious experience. We know that about half of the variance in personality, but half the differences between people are due to genetic factors, but we don't know how to explain where the other half happens. It has to be experienced, but we have no real good theories of the sort of experience that makes one person adventurous and another one timid, one bitter and one satisfied. We know a lot about the social influences that can drive people to do terrible things to one another, but we don't know the answer to the maybe harder question of why some people are immune to these influences, why some people do good things, perhaps even heroic things, regardless of the circumstances that they find themselves in. So there's an enormous amount left to do. It's an exciting field just because there's just so much more we need to understand. The second theme is more optimistic. And this is the idea that we're going to eventually come to answer these questions and many more questions through the sorts of methods we've been discussing this semester, through constructing scientific theories, evolutionary, neurological, developmental, computational, and testing them through experimental and observational methods. This is the idea that in the end, the most important and intimate aspects of ourselves, our beliefs and emotions, our capacities to make decisions, even our sense of right and wrong, can be explained through constructing and testing scientific hypotheses. Now, the reason why I'm optimistic is I think there's been some success stories where we really have learned some surprising and important things about the mind, and there's no reason to expect this way of proceeding to fail us in the future. In the very first class on the brain, I ended by talking about people's worries here. And I'll be honest that some people find it a scary prospect. Some people believe that a scientific approach to the mind takes the specialness away from people, that it diminishes us somehow. And I don't agree. If there's anything I've tried to persuade you through the course, it's that the more you look at the mind and how it works from a serious scientific point of view, the more you come to appreciate its complexity, its uniqueness, and its beauty. This has been a great course to teach. Thank you for coming, and good luck on the final.